You know that feeling, right? That tightening in your chest, the thoughts just racing, the feeling that you're constantly being chased by something. Stress. It's universal. But what's actually going on inside our bodies when we feel that pressure? Today, we're going to peel back the layers and look at the surprising science of what's happening in your brain, your body, and yeah, even your gut. We're going to ask the big question: are we really in control, or are there hidden forces pulling the strings?
This comment from a Reddit user, Carax, really just nails the big question we're digging into. How much of our well-being, our anxiety, our reactions to stress is actually under our conscious control? Are we the masters of our own minds, or are we being influenced by things we don't even know are there? That's the puzzle we're going to try and piece together.
All right, to get to the bottom of this, we've got to start at the command center, the brain. When stress hits, there's a whole team inside your head that leaps into action. So let's meet the key players, shall we?
To really get a handle on this, we can think of these different parts of the brain as characters in a play. Drawing on some fantastic work by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, let's imagine this not as just a bunch of neurons, but as a coordinated, if sometimes conflicted, team. So first up is the thalamus. Let's call it the cook. Its job is to gather all the sensory ingredients from your experience, what you see, hear, feel. Then that information gets sent down two separate paths at the exact same time. One is a lightning-fast connection to the amygdala, your alarm, which is always, and I mean always, scanning for danger. The second, much slower path goes up to the prefrontal cortex. We'll call that the watchtower, which is the rational thinking part of your brain.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because this setup creates two different roads to a reaction. The low road is that instant gut-level reaction from the amygdala. It's what makes you jump back from a snake on a trail before you even consciously think snake. Then you've got the high road. That's the watchtower's path. It's slower, it's more deliberate. It's the part of you that goes, okay, hold on, that's just a stick. A healthy stress response is really all about the balance between these two roads.
But what happens when that alarm gets stuck in the on position? When the stress isn't a snake in the path, but that constant grinding pressure from work or money or just modern life. Well, that's when we start to pay a really serious price.
Scientists actually have a term for this: allostatic load, and it's basically the biological cost of being constantly revved up. Think of it as the cumulative wear and tear on your body from a stress system that just never gets a break. And this idea, it's the critical link between feeling stressed out and actually developing long-term health problems.
So what's one of the first casualties of a high allostatic load? Yep, sleep. What you're looking at here is a healthy sleep cycle, where you can see how we dip down into these really deep restorative stages. That's the N3, and also REM sleep, marked with an R, which is super important for emotional processing. Chronic stress just shatters this beautiful pattern. It robs us of the exact stages of sleep we desperately need to recover.
And that kicks off this vicious downward spiral. The biological changes, like inflammation, start to feed psychological patterns, like anxiety. That anxiety then makes it harder to cope, which can lead to behaviors like poor sleep or avoiding problems. And all of this together just keeps spiraling, significantly increasing our risk for all sorts of diseases. It shows that chronic stress isn't just a feeling, it's a physical reality.
Okay, so if stress involves our psychology, the logical solution seems pretty simple, right? Just change your mindset. If we just think about our problems differently, can we protect ourselves from all that physical wear and tear? It's a really compelling idea.
And that leads us to this powerful concept of a growth mindset, which was made famous by the psychologist Carol Dweck. It's the belief that our abilities aren't set in stone, that we can improve with effort. So, a group of researchers at DePaul University decided to put this to the test. They wanted to know if this powerful psychological tool could act as a shield against the physical damage of stress.
This was their big question. Could believing in your ability to grow and adapt actually stop chronic stress from, say, messing with your blood pressure or hurting your long-term health? And the answer they found was, well, it was a huge surprise. The study found zero evidence that having a growth mindset protected people from the physical markers of chronic stress. In a head-to-head battle with biology, a powerful mindset, all by itself, just wasn't enough. And, let's look at the conclusion right from the paper. They say it so plainly: a growth mindset alone is insufficient. Which, when you think about it, kind of makes sense. If you're stuck in that downward spiral, a purely psychological fix might not be enough to stop a cascade that's also deeply biological and behavioral. Okay, so if the answer isn't just in our heads, where else should we be looking?
Well, this brings us to a fascinating and pretty controversial new frontier in stress research, the gut-brain axis. So, a recent study took a really bold approach. Researchers transferred gut microbes from human teenagers with social anxiety into healthy rats. And the result was startling. The rats started showing behaviors that looked a lot like anxiety. This suggests that our gut microbiome might not just be linked to our mental health, it could actually be playing a causal role. That's a huge, provocative idea.
But here's the thing about science. It's not just about flashy headlines. It's a conversation, it's a debate. And when this particular study hit the internet, a community of really sharp-eyed Reddit users started asking some tough questions. And it really shows just how messy the scientific process can be.
The Reddit science community basically took out their digital red pens and dissected the study. They pointed out some major flaws, a big age mismatch between the anxious group and the control group, and the fact that all the samples were pulled together, which basically makes it an experiment with only one sample. They even spotted that the ethics approval was dated after the study was done. Yikes. But the real deep critiques question if the transplant procedure itself was the real cause of stress. And, can rat behavior ever truly capture something as complex as human anxiety?
And this quote from a user named All Falcons Are Black just perfectly captures the biggest potential flaw. Right? Were the rats anxious because of the bacteria they got, or were they anxious because they were repeatedly traumatized by the experiment itself? It's a critical question, and it casts some serious doubt on the study's big conclusions. It's also a perfect example of why that public conversation, that scrutiny, is so essential for good science.
So where does all this leave us? We've got an academic paper telling us mindset isn't enough, and a gut study that's super interesting but also deeply flawed. It kind of feels like we're just hitting dead ends. But what if we're just asking the wrong question? What if it's not mind or gut, but mind and gut and everything else? Let's compare the solutions that our two very different sources proposed. The DePaul paper suggests a mix of top-down approaches like mindfulness and bottom-up physical approaches like breathwork. The Reddit users, on the other hand, are focused on practical things like diet and lifestyle changes. What's so fascinating is that the academics and the online community, coming from completely different worlds, basically landed on the exact same conclusion. You need a multi-system approach.
And this brilliant metaphor from Reddit user Krail just ties it all together so perfectly. Our health is like a garden. The soil, the plants, the sunlight, the water, it's all one interconnected system. Our mind, the gardener, can absolutely influence what grows. But what's growing in the garden definitely influences the gardener right back.
And that really is the ultimate takeaway here. We're always searching for that one magic bullet, the perfect mindset, the right supplement, the one trick. But what the science and the wisdom of the crowd are both telling us is that there isn't one. Health isn't about finding a single fix. It's about tending to our entire complex ecosystem.
So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a final thought. Instead of asking, how do I fix my stress? Maybe a better question is the one right here on the screen. If your health truly is a garden, what part needs your attention right now? The soil, the sunlight, the watering? What part will you choose to tend to first?